So let me just start out by welcoming everyone and thanking you for joining us here. This is a panel organized by ISA's South Asia and World Politics section. We had heard from our members that it would be useful to do this sort of thing, especially to demystify the publication process. It often seems like it's sort of a little bit of a black box, and members said it would really be helpful just to have an overview of how the publication process works, especially for those who maybe are trying to turn a dissertation into a book and are wondering, how do you even approach different presses? So here we are. This panel is to demystify the process on how to get from a dissertation or manuscript to a book. And let me just introduce our speakers here on the panel. And the presenters will go in the order that I am presenting them. First is Professor T.V. Paul, who is at McGill University. He's also a former ISA president, and he was a great supporter and really is still a great supporter of the South Asia and World Politics section. So thank you so much, TV, for joining us here. Professor Paul is joining us again from Canada, from McGill University. Next, we have with us Professor Subrata Mitra, who is joining us from Germany, Heidelberg University, where he's a professor emeritus. He's also the founding editor of the Routledge Advances in South Asia series. It's lovely to have you 6 hours ahead from the East Coast with us. Thank you so much, Subrata, for joining us here. It's nice to have a group together, even if we're just connecting virtually. It's lovely to see all your faces. Third, we have with us Dorothea Schaefter, who is joining us from Sweden, I believe. And Dorothea is a series editor, senior editor, sorry, for the South Asia Studies sort of area at Routledge, and that includes multiple publications, including the Advances series that Subrata Mitra is the founding editor of, and that I am now editing. I am Rani Mullen. I'm a co-chair of the South Asian World Politics section, and I'm a professor at William & Mary, and I'm also the series editor of the Advances in South Asian Studies at Routledge. So thank you all so very much for joining us this morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are joining us from. And I'll give the floor to Professor Paul, and maybe 8 to 10 minutes if that works, and then we'll go in the order of the presenters.
Okay, thank you very much, Rani, and the South Asia section to organize it. I'm not only a supporter, I was also very pivotal for the founding of the section. You may recall that ISA was very reluctant to do this, and it happened during my presidency, and before that as the program person for this regional sections. Anyway, beyond that, I'm also the editor of the South Asia series Georgetown has had for a period of time now. Some ups and downs. We have had 2 books came out last year or so. Rajesh Basroor's book on Indian foreign policy is the latest one. The challenge with the university press is, of course, very selective and goes through a couple of iterations, reviews, and South Asian scholars often have reluctance to go through that process, but we try our best to accelerate the process. So let me give some general ideas about what we are looking for and what presses in general look for. First of all, people, young people starting the profession are not that familiar with this publishing world. Publishing world is radically changing. I'm sure my Routledge colleagues can tell us more about it. Hardly any print copies these days are easy to sell, so it's electronic mostly, and libraries buy bulk, and then students and people can just download it, and it's a major blow to their business model. So you don't expect to become rich by publishing a book unless your university gives you a tenure job and all that promotion. That's the main purpose. But of course, actually, the main purpose is to get your peer group to read your books and get cited and get attention each way. So what are interesting ways to go about it? Puzzles, paradoxes, research question is very important. Everything you write in your dissertation is not going to go to the book. So this is where the key to attract an editor, because they want to sell, even if it's electronic format. Your idea is probably that, okay, this is an academic book. The presses are very interested in academic subjects. Yes, but with the big caveat that they want the books to be purchased by at least some libraries. So dissertations are not ready because there's too many citations, too many praises to the dissertation committee, and all the parochial things going. Most people are not interested in that, by the way. Outsiders beyond your network. Appropriate language, whether the book is geared for policymakers or scholars only, but I think it has to have both. So language, simple, even if it's university press, tight prose is very important. Citations, crediting key scholars on the topic. As an editor and a reviewer, this is a big mistake people make. They ignore the works already exist, or have some personal fiefdom with some people or something, won't full attention. So who are the people going to review your book? The people who wrote about it. And they will read it and say, okay, even if the person is extremely generous, there will be a feeling that this person has not read the literature or doesn't want to pay attention. So pay attention to that literature, because it is going to go to the people who are working on it. And it's a big challenge for newcomers, especially not knowing this is a big part of the networking process. Avoid plagiarism. People don't realize taking ideas, cutting, tightening prose. That's why people don't realize that sometimes ideas are from other people, and that's very important. Criticism, yes, sufficient criticism, but without being mean, because if you are mean, then the reviewer has no interest to help you, because you are just not helping the whole engagement process. So you can create controversy, but without being completely rejecting an idea, because no idea is 100% correct in social sciences. There's no real science really in terms of deep understanding. Academic book versus trade books. Many people think that they can get famous by writing an academic book. Not really, because books don't sell or go. Trade books do sometimes, but again, for that, you need an agent, and the language and the style, publicity, all are important. Irrespective of any book you publish, you got to publicize through the social media, through your network, going to South Asia and World Affairs receptions, meeting people who really matter to you. They are not going to come to you if you are a starter, unless the book hits the big wave through various reviews and other things. And so you can look at the specialized presses. Of course, we have some other university presses too, do Asia. But these two book series right now are really the places to go if you have. And so we are always encouraging people to send us proposal. At least we will respond quickly. Review can take a little time, but even there, Georgetown has been a better press than many other I am dealing with myself. The proposal is the key here. First of all, you have to have an introduction. The title matters. In other words, the title is what people look at the first time. Okay, anything that is so long title, no. Short but crispy, Of course, the editors will have suggestions. And then half a page, what is the puzzle or research question? Why is it important? Half a page. In other words, there are a lot of things in the world people study, but will this book sell by this editor or this publishing house? Why is it important for the discipline? Why is it important for your field you're working in? And what is your argument? This is actually the gist of your position you're taking. That's very critical. It shouldn't be reading like a typical academic. It has to have some academic, of course, but something, the hook, they call it, that stands out from the crowd. And that's where dissertations sometimes fail, because they are about some big problem, but not identifying the exact problem. Then the existing literature, yes, you can say that these books don't deal with this subject or not, and so I'm dealing with this subject. Why is yours important? Another quarter page. And then a bit on marketing. Who are the buyers? Will it be adopted in a classroom? If you are already a faculty, will you use it in your classroom? So if you can offer those kind of options, if you're teaching a big class, well, South Asia classes tend to be smaller, you can obviously pitch that. You have any special arrangement with military schools or foreign policy people, who may buy it for diplomats? Anything that impresses the publisher. Then you have a chapter outline, tight, nicely putting nice chapters. Again, you can avoid subtitles if you want, but clearly it is very important. If you have any links to journals, magazines, review publicity, you can put a little bit. Media appearances, what you could do, book launches, book trade fairs, or will you be going to those things? Yes, for a young person, newcomer, it's all sounded too much, but it's not that difficult if you create a list of places you can go in your town. Say you are in a big place, there are all kinds of things going on. For us, it is ISA, APSA, Asian Studies Center, South Asia Conference in Wisconsin. These are the places you get some attention. So we are looking at something like 3 pages maximum. You have to also say the word length, expected date of completion. Do not have a long lag time. Publishers and editors don't have much time. So you don't want to say, I will submit this in 2 years from now. No, you come back after 1.5 years. So 3 months maximum, because they are inundated with materials and there's only one person usually handling it in presses. And these guys are not all that happy if you say, I'm going to, well, they may encourage you to come back. Short bibliography if you want, but that is, again, your CV. Again, short CV is okay, but long CV is also not bad. For the dissertation, revise, rewrite, make it easy to read, make it punchy, show it to your colleagues, friends who can pick issues, correct language. Introduction by a published scholar to an editor may help, not entirely, but at least the first cut. So if your supervisor has published or your faculty committee member, they could be the first person to introduce you, or if you are already connected as some senior scholar. Attending conferences, very important, because that's where the editors show up. And if you write to them in advance, don't write the day before. Some editors are booked way in advance, a couple of months ahead. Write to them, say, you get 20 minutes maximum. So that's when you are selling. This is the elevator pitch. You got to really be enthusiastic about what you are doing. If you're not enthusiastic, why should the listener be enthusiastic? This is for good advice for job seekers too, because people want to know why you are wasting time on this, or why you are spending time on it. Wasting is another thing. If you have a manuscript, bring it with you, even if it's not edited, to show that this is what I have. It can be a PDF. Quickly run through and say, this is what I have, this is what I'm doing. And so it's critical to show you are not going to submit the dissertation as it is. They don't have the capacity to help with you all the copy editing, tightening. You can show your proposal to multiple editors But unless you get permission, you cannot submit the full manuscript to more than one. This is very critical because it may go to the same editor, same reviewer, and they won't like it because it costs money. You know, every reviewer often gets some payment. And so I think I'm getting closer to assuming they show interest, then you send, you can also send a couple of chapters, by the way, if you have initially, and then you send the full manuscript according to the style of the publisher, and then check everything, and then wait for them to review. Of course, some of them may not respond properly, then keep sending every month or two. You're sending it review. Sometimes they ask for names of people to as reviewers, also names you want to exclude. South Asia in particular, it's a challenging field, as you know, for personal reasons, issues generate. But clearly it is a process. It can take up to 6 months to get this process, the contract. And at that moment, of course, you need to consult someone who has published what all should be in it, what rights you are giving. So in South Asia case, sometimes people ask for South Asia rights so that you can publish it in India or Pakistan as separate edition, which is not always easy, but it is something you can ask. So anyway, and then you publicize the book on your own. Don't sit at home and expect the publisher to do all the work for you. It will not work. I'll stop there and you can ask questions about our series at the end. We have some time, I guess. Thank you so much.
Subrata, floor is yours.
Rani, you are absolutely correct. The book publishing process needs to be demystified because when I was an undergraduate in India, books used to scare me. I thought sort of they came from heaven because many of them were published abroad and we were taught from them. And we didn't have anyone like TV who just spelled it out that a book is something that everyone can if you go about it the right way. So the question for me today is not how to, but whether. Is it worth bothering to publish a book? Should you be not doing other things? And first of all, this publish or perish is actually more applicable to publishers, and Dorothea will tell you more about it because they make a living out of it. And I have had excellent students in Germany who have published a lot but never got a permanent job. And I've got colleagues who got permanent jobs and didn't bother to write a book afterwards. So what I want to demystify is why a book? Why not articles? I have done both books and articles, and as Rani kindly said, I have set up the Advances series, and I've also done other edited books and series, but I remain a strong believer in a book. Of course, in the German-speaking world, if you have done a PhD, as you can say, you can't wear that degree until you have published the book. So it's not even a choice. The choice of publishing a book or making a book out of your dissertation is really applicable to the Anglo-Saxon world and the rest of the world which have followed the Anglo-Saxon practice. Why do I believe in a book? Because unlike an article, the book is your book. It's like having sovereign right over a specific territory where all the citizens are your creations. So a book sums up what you have to contribute to a particular part of a field. And books take a long time to prepare. It locks you in. So I would start by saying, if you don't really have it in you to do a book, do other things, because it will take a lot of time. And in the end, it might not get you what you're after. So a dissertation. In the Advances series, I was very keen on good PhD dissertations from good universities, because that is, you get a PhD because you have done something new, either asked a new question or you have got new data. So if you are doing a PhD at a good university, you should start by deciding the kind of book it's going to be. And a conversation like this is very useful because the PhDs, of course, doctoral dissertations are more and more about less and less. But if you had the book in mind, you would know what to do with that dissertation when you go to someone like Dorothea via Rani. And keep that in mind. And all the tips that TV has given are extremely useful. I'll come back to it later when I finish. One of the things that I would add to the list of TV is which kind of press to go to. Now, some universities are neurotic when it comes to tenure decisions, that the book has to be from a university press. Now, why don't I give a real life example? I have a book in my hand by a certain Rani Mullen, before she was Professor Rani, and the book is called Decentralization, Local Governance and Social Well-being in India. When the manuscript came to me, I absolutely adored it. Rani worked with Atul Kohli, and with Dorothea, we had it reviewed. I have also spoken to the reviewers about it since, and it all went well, except that the tenure committee would say, Routledge is a commercial publisher. It will not do. We, thanks to Rani, we put up a fight, and we proved that the advances is the part of Routledge which is comparable to any university press. And I would therefore say, of course, you have to respect the local rules, but even within publishers like Routledge, there are corners which are comparable. The most important thing is what kind of backup you're getting from the series editor and from the publisher. There, I would argue that when I got the series going, I spent a long time, and Dorothea will bear it out. We used to read word for word the whole manuscript, and how often have I come up with titles and with very substantive comments. So which series you are going to is a very important decision to make. Then books change in nature as you go up in your career. If you are a PhD candidate, think of the book. If you have got your first job, non-tenured, think of transforming your dissertation into a good book and getting a few articles out of it. But once you have your first book and you are beginning to think about the second book, the challenge is, while you are waiting to have your second book, you can also think of areas from your book which have contiguous material, and you can pick them up as edited books. Edited books or editing a book gives you an excellent opportunity when you are at a panel to pick up friends, pick up additional material, and reading other people's work forces you to be much more precise about your own work. And I've done quite a bit of editing. It has helped me very much with my subsequent books. My next point would be, for any doctoral candidate, you'd realize that you can bite one part of the puzzle that you're after, but you can't do it all. So I would give my own example. At Rochester, my puzzle was, why do governments hold together sometimes and not always? Why is there governmental instability in some places, not all places, at some times and not all times? That issue stayed with me. So after I came to Germany, I went back to it again and worked on governance and asking, why is there governance sometimes and not at other times? And I was still very much a Rochester scientist working on mathematical models and statistics. And my newest book has no statistics at all. I was asking myself, where do people get their ideas? How far do they go to get those ideas? How do ideas trickle down, trickle up? And how do some states manage to produce a lot of order out of very little force? Or how do they do governance by stealth? And this is why I ended up writing the history of India's Home Ministry, which has just come from Oxford. And this is where I'm showing how, if you are a doctoral candidate and you keep thinking about books, a book will produce its subsequent generations. Now, I'm going to end by thanking TV and regretting that no one told me what TV has told us today. I thought writing books was my business, publicizing them was a business of the publisher. I'm afraid that doesn't happen, which is also probably why my books never really got around. It's your business, if you think you have made a contribution, to publicize that contribution and go to panels like this, or put it on social network or whatever. I'm too old for that. But if you're beginning a career, please remember, books are not just confined to your study or to the small friend circle. Books belong to the whole world. A problem that has tracked you for 3 years is considered important. So publicize, take criticism seriously. Most critics, some critics would like you to write the book they would have liked to write, but not most critics. At Routledge, we pick our readers very, very carefully, and we take them very seriously. The series editor in Routledge does not decide what gets published, and Dorothea will tell you a lot more about it. So it has been a long career, writing books, editing them, promoting other people, and in the end, continuing to be a believer in a book. I have written articles, and they're very important, but a book is your sovereign territory. You can really spell it out, and every word in the book matters. Just remember that. Thank you. I will pass the floor now to Dorothea.
Thank you, Subrata. Thank you, TV. Thanks, Rani, for giving me the opportunity. I really think this is a great forum, really. I look forward to your questions later as well. I think apart from, talking directly, when you have the opportunity to talk to an editor directly at a conference, sometimes we're kind of this far away person who's not very approachable, and who makes these important decisions about whether or not my book gets published. And of course, it's a bit daunting, but it's always good to remember that we're all just human beings, and we're all really working towards the same aim. We want to publicize research, important research on South Asia, really, in this forum here. So it's really a pleasure to be here. I wanted to maybe focus a little bit more on the life cycle of a book and really the publishing process. And I'm putting a link here in the chat, which kind of gives an overview of really what stages a book goes through. I usually think the first step is really identifying a publisher or identifying a series. I think you've already got two great options here. If you're working on politics in South Asia, the Advances in South Asian Studies series is actually also a bit broader. We welcome submissions that deal with South Asia from other disciplines, not just politics and IR. So, but that's actually just adds to the flavor of it. It doesn't diminishing its importance in the field of politics. The next stage in the life cycle of the book is really from proposal submission or book idea to the contract stage. Then it's the writing stage and the final submission. Then comes the production process, which includes copy editing, proofreading, the index creation, following the typesetting, and then finally publication. The book proposal, what we look for and what most other publishers look for, is fairly straightforward, really. TV was talking about it. We need a statement of aims, the rationale for the book, table of contents and chapter summaries, the market for the book, and also suggestions for potential reviewers. And of course, specifications such as format and the timeline for completion. We always have some special, in our proposal guidelines, which Rani will share later, we have some special section on books based on PhDs. And we are always grateful if you really take the time to consider these questions and write about that, because it really gets you started on how different is the PhD thesis from a book. And it is indeed quite different. We also have some tips on the Routledge website, actually, if I converting your thesis into a manuscript, and there's other resources available as well. So don't hesitate to ask, really. And once you're in a discussion with an editor, you can approach them first, and then you get the proposal guidelines again, and you can discuss what needs to be done in a proposal. For books based on PhDs, we, for example, require revised thesis chapters. Some other presses require the whole manuscript that's revised and prepared. So the advantage sometimes at Routledge is really that we can go a bit quicker because we and proceed to the peer reviewing stage. Because we only need 3 chapters and the proposal and the CV. The peer review is really, usually prior to the peer review, there's an internal editorial assessment takes place. And the 2 key points really that I consider is really quality and the sales potential. And for that, really, for the quality aspect, the series editors are really my guidance. They read all proposals that I consider important for or appropriate for the series, or whatever submission that is done directly for the series. So Rani or Subrata would have read all the proposals that come in that we consider, and if the quality is good, then I would then say, well, does this book actually sell? Is there a market for it? Do we have related sales? Does it fit the direction of the list? And we always look, does it really fit the series as well? There are sometimes submissions that might not be quite appropriate for the Advances series. So then we find maybe another home if the quality is good enough. But in any case, the series editors and I would then decide who to approach for peer review, and we usually solicit 2 to 3 academic reports. And in the reader's questionnaire, we ask our readers, how does the book fit into the intended subject area and for the market? Will there be a readership? What does the proposal and the sample material read like? How's the methodology? Are there suggestions for revisions? Is there anything that should be added? Are there glaring omissions? What can be improved? And then there's an overall recommendations. These reviews, which I collate, I then discuss with the series editor prior to sending them to the author, because it's always good to kind of consider and get some additional comments. So often a book that gets submitted for the Advances series really has 2 to 3 academic reports plus an additional academic support, basically, by the series editor. And I'm sure that will be the same issue with the Georgetown series as well. The author is then requested. So the reader's reports are sent on to the author, and you should then take those recommendations on and have a look at them and look at the advice that's been given and really consider, can I take this on board? Is this reasonable? Is there a suggestion? For example, can I go on field work again and update some data? Can I read some literature that has been recommended? Of course, that maybe will be possible. And then just send the detailed responses back to us, which the series editor and I will then read. If everything then is well, I will prepare a financial estimate of each project. So and a presentation to my editorial board at Routledge. So the presentation includes the financial estimate and the sales projection. It includes the proposal, the CV. It includes all readers' reports and the author's responses and the series recommendation. So it's fairly comprehensive. The good thing is that at a commercial press, we want to proceed fairly quickly once we have that material in hand, just because that is usually the bottleneck, because we're waiting for external reviews. So we meet, our editorial board meets on a weekly basis. So once we've reached that stage, a contract can be offered very quickly. A contract gets signed electronically nowadays, and then really it is your task to look at the publishing guidelines that we send, to prepare your manuscript, to seek feedback maybe from your colleagues whilst you're writing and preparing the final manuscript. And the final manuscript, before it goes into production, is assessed by the series editor again to ensure that corrections have been made and that the project is ready for publication. I won't go into the intricacies of the publication process because that kind of extends this limit of the presentation, but I'm more than happy to hear from you really and answer questions. I think that the website link that I provided, and there's further information as well, will give some you a good idea. But in any case, we always welcome new submissions. We're approachable. I think all of us, I speak for that. So I think I just want to thank you for your time here. So.
Thank you so much, Dorothea, Subrata TV. I think this has been excellent. Together, you've really given different aspects, different information, but put together, I think this really has helped to demystify the process that, you know, it is in our interest on the sort of editor and publishing side to publish, because after all, this is the business we're in, that this is what editors want to do. And just to sort of explain the process to you, we have about 15 minutes or so left for Q&A. Let me just make a couple points while people maybe think of questions that they would like to ask the panelists, and you can, you know, either physically or raise the hand symbol or put your question in the chat, whichever you're most comfortable with. I wanted to say that, and just reiterate again, that this meeting is being recorded, and we will send the link out of this recording to all members of ISA, SAWP, the South Asia and World Politics section. We will also send out the materials on these two series with regard to the sort of overall link online, but also greater information on the series, which is a little bit difficult to share here, but I think will be more helpful for everybody who registered for the event, just so you know that you will have that information in your inbox shortly. I also wanted to, I guess the one thing I wanted to add to what all my illustrious panelists have said here is that keep in mind that the review process, you know, once publishers have decided, okay, this is a good manuscript that we'd like to send out, can take a while. And I think that's often frustrating for people who, you know, you've worked so hard on this manuscript, you've polished it up, you've sent it out, and then comes the waiting period. And that is frustrating, but I would just say, keep in mind that everybody who reviews manuscripts, and manuscripts are, right, take much more time to review than a journal article, they all have full-time jobs. They have day jobs, so they're doing this on the side, and it just takes a while to get, you know, people who are willing to review the manuscript, in whose areas of expertise this is, and who find the time to really read through and give thoughtful comments. So that is just part of the process. It takes a while to get these comments because people do have other full-time jobs, and they're doing this really as a service to their profession, which you know, we all appreciate, but at the same time, it just is a process that can take several months. I think we have all, you know, the input from the panelists has really given you all hopefully a good overview, but there is already a couple questions here in the section. Gilles has a question where he says in the chat, I was hoping to hear advice on the writing process itself. and he was saying, beyond the question of language and citations, where should one make cuts from the thesis to the book? Literature review, method section, data, and presentation of data. So I think that's a really great question, Gilles, in terms of, you know, the academic part of a dissertation, and then where do you make those cuts to actually get it out in a publication. A thank you note from Chris, who just had to leave. Right there, I'll be happy to again share this video for others who were not able to attend. So who would like to pick up with a question that Gilles has posed?
I would happily tackle this question. How often do we get enormously long manuscripts, or I used to get, and which were written for a committee of 3 examiners, and then we have to think of that text as a text which would be of interest to more than 3 people? My advice there would be, do your dissertation to persuade your examiners that you are a proper, well-trained professional, that you are a political scientist. But your general reader is much more interested in the results that you achieved. And blow up those results, connect them to other people's results on the similar field, and if you can, simply cut on the method section. Unless it's a book on methodology itself, and from the advances, we were not doing books on methodology. We were much more interested in how you're advancing the field. Now, I was very, very particular about the word advances. Now, the area studies is a hybrid creature, as one would say in German, it's a horse with 2 heads. It had to be precise and specific about the facts, but at the same time had to speak to people outside the area. So it had to have enough theoretical content and empirical body, so to say. So when I would work on these long dissertations, I would first of all say, we need 80,000 words, not a lot more. People then beg for a few thousand more, but 80,000 words is what the reader is looking for, and the writer then has to pack those 80,000 words with material that would be of interest to a larger body than the 3 examiners and the university, I don't know, faculty. It goes to the faculty. So to answer Gilles' question, I would say cut down on literature review, cut down on method, and extend the results, and what you don't do for a dissertation, connect those results to results that other people have found, so that the book then defines the frontier of your field in that specific area.
So let me, I think Subrata is right on all those things. I think the first thing you can do is look at a successful book that became dissertation, became book. There are quite a few in the Cornell series, you know, general books. Look at the careers of some prominent scholars in your field. Their dissertations did become books. That'll give you an idea of what you can do to reduce the length. Secondly, no verbatim quotes unless it's something really absolutely necessary. That is a very long, lengthy thing. Often people think we have to put everything somebody else said. People want to know what you are going to say, because unless it's this quote is from Nehru or somebody who is helping you, but even there, some quotes are very well known. So paraphrasing is better. Categorize literature into topics rather than individualizing them. So you can definitely cut short on that one. But dissertations in South Asia, especially, there's a tendency to have at least 1 chapter, 2 chapters on the existing literature. That should come in within the body of the introduction or the theory part. What you contribute is the most thing, how convincing it is for a reader. So tightening the prose in that sense is very important. It's difficult to let some sentences go, but it is also useful to show to a good editor, copy editor, if you can afford pay someone who can condense language and bring out the good juice in your argument that may stand out, because otherwise, Subrata is correct that the committee is different from the outside reader. The outsider reader is inundated with literature, and what that person is interested is in something new that will attract the attention.
I conclude, or maybe I can just add a little bit. I think what you said both is very important and really right. I think you can also have a look at the introduction and the conclusion and just focus on those and make those more accessible in terms of the language. I think it's always good to kind of know that you get the hook, you get the kind of wider readership. And of course, absolutely, we want your argument, we want what you bring forward. So really draw out and expand on the main findings and put focus on that. In addition to a copy editor, I think also feedback from colleagues and friends is always valuable, I think, so that you can do. And in terms of preparing the manuscript also for submission or for peer review, just consistency in the references always gives a good impression. And it might sound nitpicky, but I think it just, the way you present your work is always, it's kind of like your business card and your expose. So yeah. Rani, did you?
I would add to that if you're you want to tighten up all sections, right? Often lengthy, 200,000 words or so, it'll be hard, right? For really long manuscripts to get published. So just to add to whatever everyone has said, the purpose of a dissertation is different from a book, right? I mean, in terms of getting your PhD versus publishing for a wider audience, just to reiterate what everyone has said here. So if you want to tighten up your language, get it down to the required length for your destined publication series. But beyond that, if you're trying to think about which chapter or which section to cut, I would say it's often your, and this is going back to the question that Gilles had, in your dissertation, you will have a lengthy literature review and a lengthy methods section, right? It does not need to be lengthy for the general audience. So if you're, you don't want to cut down on the substance of what you're presenting, the new materials that you have researched, though you of course want to have those tight and condensed. But if you're looking at where to cut, I think lengthy literature reviews and lengthy method sections is not something that you will see in books, right? So those are the areas where you'll need to cut a little bit. We also have another question in the chat, which asks about reworking the PhD, and if somebody was interested in both journal articles as well as books, which one to focus on first. And of course, I mean, I'll hand this over to our panelists, but I do want to say, just keep in mind, you can't publish the exact same, you can't just take a chapter, a manuscript that you've sent out for book publication, and then send that chapter out to a journal, right? So you need to think about that, because then there are issues of plagiarism, including yourself, and no editor, no publishing series wants to publish something that's already published elsewhere and where the rights to your publication are also with another publisher, right? So you need to think about that strategically. Finally, I just wanted to ask the panelists, there's a question here from Sarah, who's here with us in the audience, who is from ISA, and she is wondering if you would all be all right. Thank you, Sarah, for joining us here.
No, thank you. This was fantastic.
Great, thank you. So Sarah is wondering if you are all right with, and Sarah is ISA's Director of Professional Development, and she would like to share the recording of this panel with the entire sort of wider ISA membership. And I just wanted to make sure that I have the panelists' agreement on that before I share her.
Yes,
Sure,
Yeah.
yes.
I'll be all right with it.
Absolutely.
And
Great.
can I take a
Thank
quick
you.
shot?
Yeah.
I think it's a question. I have a practical tip for Mohammed, the last questioner. See, when you're writing a book proposal, I always told my doctoral candidates, when you're writing a book proposal, it is already an article in a nuclear form. A book proposal, in a way, pulls together the essence of the book, the entire manuscript. So the book proposal itself can resurface as an article, and always do a bit of intelligence work, try to find out what does your tenures committee like, what kind of combination of a tier 1 journal and a book, or just a tier 1 or couple of tier 1 journal articles, or some British universities were obsessive about a big book. No big book, no readership. So local knowledge in terms of what is required, think of the book proposal as a potential article, and follow Rani's advice. Don't put the exact same text into a journal article and the book.
So I would add that the reverse could be feasible if it is 1 or 2 articles out of the manuscript, maximum 2 if you put more than that, but you cannot put exactly the same journal article. It has to have some changes. You need the copyright, which is tricky these days, from the journal. And the timeline is the biggest problem for you, because if you're looking at a tier 1 journal, they can take years to get an article out, unless you are very lucky to get it done faster. So before you publish the book, you need the copyright from that, and that would require some amount of work. So the timeline for you is very important. If you are already just finishing your PhD, try to get the articles out quickly if you can. Submit at least 1 or 2 maximum of your central thesis. This article is useful sometimes to publicize the book, because the book then will get more attention if the article gets publicized. For instance, the big book that Huntington published about Clash of, there was an article in Foreign Affairs that got the attention. Same with the book about the after liberal victory, and a lot of those big books. But even smaller books have attracted because of the articles. I think the best thing for someone in your question is try to publish articles as soon as you can, but again, work on the book proposal. You can mention that a couple of articles are under review, but by the time the book is about to be accepted, you need those copyrights, because one of the things they ask for it. This is something very important depending on which school you are in. Okay, if you are at a top leading school, they expect you to do both or publish in tier 1 journals, which is APSR and IO and World Politics. As you know, there's huge amount of gatekeeping and networking there. Sometimes even if your article is the best, unlikely to get in because of various reasons. I don't want to go into all the biases that exist in this profession. But the point is, it requires quite a bit of familiarizing with those journals themselves, what exactly they're looking for. And there you need to seek out your committee or people who have published in those journals and how you can do that. But it is better not to wait until you finish the dissertation publishing journal articles. If you look at some of the job candidates, they come with 2-3 articles. That really will push you up in the book manuscript business too, because the editors then say, okay, you already published 2-3 articles, you have a good chance of getting the attention of your peer group. So this is the process that, but some small schools, maybe colleges, may not require you to have a tier 1 journals, 2nd tier journals too, or try some of those. The Asia Pacific, there are quite a few journals exist, and some of them are very good. But even for journal articles, these days don't get attention unless you push it through your network. That is social media these days. So it's a lot of networking through these kind of forums where you make connections, send out the articles to people. And even the book, once it is published, send out flyers or buy some copies and send to the scholars who are working in that area, because they don't immediately notice anything that come out these days.
Dorothea, do you have anything to add from your end on?
With the journals, articles, and the books? I mean, I think always, as TV just said as well, I mean, having a published journal article would suffice actually, and to have that on your CV. And, you know, whilst you've been kind of preparing the PhD for, or even whilst you've been preparing the thesis for publication. I think that helps because it kind of proves that you can write for an academic audience compared to your examiners. So I think, and we would take that into consideration, but of course it can't be just, you can't just quote the entire article and then use it in the book. And again, copyright is important. Often it's not a problem if it's your own work and you're reproducing the work, or you're using the article as a basis for one chapter, then usually the other publisher grants permission to use that. But if, for example, you have it from an edited collection or want to use it as a chapter in an edited collection, it can be a bit more tricky. So yeah, copyright is
let me add one more thing, that when you are working on your manuscript, a lot of ideas will hit you, okay? And so you set aside those for the articles. This thing I could work on, develop more. So create that way a compendium of materials in your name. And that will require, also even your second book, by the way, you cannot have everything in one book. So it's not like you are going to miss. So if your dissertation is very big and you have too many materials, too many case studies, you could keep aside some for your next book, some for your articles. So this is a long process anyway, and have folders for each one of them. And then when you get your ideas, you know, this is what I do. Sometimes when I fly, I get ideas. I type those ideas and keep it there. and as a result, after a few years, you will notice you have multiple projects you can work on. And of course, some people have more success in that task, multiple tasks. But it is important to have a set of things you can work later on.
It kind of echoes what Subrata said earlier as well. I think that is a very good tip, really. Your dissertation is just the beginning, really. There's lots to kind of get out of there and lots of starting points. So
might years later go back to it, right? Pick up on things that develop and want to pick up on an aspect of it for an article. So I think that this has been incredibly helpful also for me, just to get, you know, see and hear what you have to say about the process. I think it's excellent that we'll be able to reach a wider audience with this recording. So thank you so much for speaking today and for agreeing to send this out to the ISA membership. There are several thanks that came in the chat also. We are at shortly after 10 and it was supposed to be for an hour. I don't see any more questions in the chat. I just want to thank our panelists here who took of their time to enlighten everyone about and to help demystify the process. thank you so much for those who were able to join. And I'm sure we'll, this was a really useful panel, so I'm sure it will be helpful to a broader audience beyond who was able to join, those who were able to join today. So thank yous coming in the chat. Thank you to all the panelists for taking the time and giving advice to help demystify the publication process. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.